Welcome to another episode of Stories from the Edge of Life. We once again have a return guest, uh, Mr. Kamalakiran Vinjamuri. Uh, Welcome again.
Hello, namaste. Thank you again.
Thank you. Would you mind introducing yourself to our audience once again?
Yes, I'm Kamalakiran Vinjamuri. I'm a violinist and I'm based in Washington, D.C.
And I'm Parag Bharadwaj. I'm a hospice and palliative medicine physician. So, welcome back. And last time we had a great discussion about, uh, the history of the
Tampura.
various the tanpura and the instruments and the ragas. We just touched upon that a little bit.
Yes.
So, want to talk about the expertise that you have. And when we once we get to the before we get to the violin, you it was very interesting. You mentioned actually that you started your musical journey learning the mridangam, right? Which is
Rangam, yes.
which is a form of a drum,
Yes.
and then you got exposed to other instruments. Uh, it seems like I don't want to make the assumption you have a lineage of you come from a lineage of violinists,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so is that why you gravitated towards the violin, or what was it that
So what
drew you
happened is,
towards it?
so as a kid, I always gravitated towards the mridangam. Percussion was something that was, I think many kids are attracted to percussion, first of all. And I was pretty decent at it. And so I learned the keyboard and mridangam, both. So keyboard, I learned all the songs on keyboard I could play. Actually, around the age of 4 and 5, I was playing small concerts, not concerts, but just 10-minute performances like that on the keyboard. And then along the way, I also picked up the harmonica, mouth organ, and I would also play those uh, just here and there. Um, but then once violin started to get serious, I told you I started learning from my father. And around the age of 9, he decided, listen, this is not working out. We have to take you to India. So I went to India for 1 year. So when I went that year, I learned both mridangam and violin. Violin from the great Kanyakumari ma'am, who's one of the greatest violinists. Then mridangam from one Tanjavur Kumar sir. He's also a great mridangist in Chennai. And what they were both telling me is, so first of all, the parts of in the violin we use the tip of our fingers, and we have to bend a lot like this to be able to play the violin. Mridangam we hit, so there's chances of the fingers getting rough, making it tough for it to bend. So that's what people say. Okay, so they're not complementary instruments. Although mridangam is very good for layam or the rhythm, you learn the rhythm through it. It's very good to have both, but you have to focus on one. They said you have to decide which one you want to make your main. Both teachers were telling me this. You make one instrument your main, and the other one you learn for the knowledge, but if you practice it too much, it'll hurt the other. So, like that, we were just deciding, and I think at that point, because everyone in the family did violin and, that was there, I just decided, okay, I'm going to do the violin. That being said, to this day, I've still learned mridangam. I still play mridangam. I can play mridangam for a concert if I really practice. I haven't practiced. That's another thing. I don't practice. I don't have time for it. But I've learned mridangam until as recent as even every Vijay Dasami now. I learn from Vijay Ganesh. He's a mridangist here in the DC. Even once a year on Vijay Dasami, I'll call him and I'll get some lesson from him. And though I don't practice the mridangam, and violin has become my main, it's one of the instruments that's really helped me come to the place that I'm at right now.
Thank you, thank you. You know what was fascinating? It just struck me. You said kids are attracted towards percussion instruments, and you're right. They just like to bang on stuff,
Yeah.
and maybe that's where it starts from. I'd never thought of it. Fascinating, and I just want to make sure I'm not missing any instrument. So you play the mridangam, the keyboard, the violin. So
Mouth organ.
this time you mentioned the mouth organ. Is there anyone that I'm missing?
No, those are it. And now, really, the only instrument I play well is the violin. I can play the mridangam, but you see, all of these, I might have the skill to do it. I might have the skill set to do it, but the stamina, because I don't practice, I might not have that stamina. in any of these instruments.
Got it. So let me ask you this. You mentioned stamina, right? So when we think of stamina, often we think of a marathon runner. Uh, what kind of stamina do you really need for somebody, a novice like myself? You're just sitting and playing the instrument. So what do you need the stamina for?
So let me give you a little demonstration of the practice I do, because that'll show what stamina I need. Because see, in Indian music, in Carnatic music, there is what we call gamaka. Gamakam is oscillations. So if I want to do, and you'll see, I'll put the Shruti box now. We were talking about the Shruti, so I'll put it now. This will be in the background. Okay. See, these are all little oscillations. So in order to be able to do that for 2-3 minutes, I need to have 2-3 hours. I need to have stamina. But then I also do speed practice. For speed practice, this is what I practice. It's like marathon running, as you said, until I lose control. Like this, I'll keep on playing until my hands fall off, until I can't play anymore.
That was
And
amazing. That was
this
amazing.
all builds the stamina.
So how long can you go when you go that fast?
Sorry?
What's how long have you gone playing the fast version?
So this is not, again, it's not for stage performance. It's for
Right.
my own
Practice.
kind of practice. So yeah,
Yeah.
I can go on 10-15 minutes. I'll keep on
Wow.
going.
Amazing. All right. So I'll tell you when I want to talk about the blend between the violin and the Carnatic music, because Carnatic music, you told us, is a history that is thousands of years old. The violin is a fairly new instrument when you take into context the history of India. And I actually tell I was exposed to somebody playing the Carnatic music on violin when I was in med school, and I was wondering what was going on. Your ears are not used to hearing uh,
Mm.
the the Indian style of music being played on the violin. So, could you just share a little bit about, is there something unique? Because I do notice that when the Indian violinists play the Carnatic music, they hold the violin very differently than
Yeah.
than how it's traditionally held.
So violin has a history, obviously, of a long time when it comes to Western music. Okay, there were violin-like instruments for a long time. Then one Niccolo Amati, he's a Italian maker. He was like the violin maker of the day. And then his students were Stradivari, that's the Stradivarius violin. And then there's another violin maker named Guarneri. So they all made, like, you know, Western violin, if you go into the history, it's rich. It goes on for so long. So obviously, when India was colonized, and British ruling was there, French ruling was there, a lot of violence came to India through that. And there's two stories. We don't know which one is true. There's one person named Vadivelu who is said to have seen the violin and introduced it to Carnatic music. Another one, I talked about the Trimurtis, Tyagaraja, Muthuswami Dikshitar, Shyama Shastri. Muthuswami Dikshitar's brother, Baluswami Dikshitar, is said to have seen the violin and said, hey, this doesn't have any frets. So let's try to see if we can implement this in Carnatic music. So before this, Veena was you must have seen the Veena. Veena and sitar were the instruments, Veena for Carnatic music. But when performing, Veena had two problems. One, there was no sustained sound because it's just a pluck. Whereas a bow, I can sustain the sound. As long as I bow, there's a sustained sound. So that makes the violin slightly more advantageous for concert. Of course, now with Veena, there's a lot of acoustic capabilities that you can do. But the second thing is, what makes Carnatic music or Hindustani music what it is gamakam. So gamakam is basically oscillation or any kind of just part of the music sound. So we don't play plain music, right? If I want to play Western music, I've learned Western classical as well. So if I wanted to play Twinkle Twinkle, it's very plain. So it's very conducive to this kind of holding. But for Carnatic music, you have lots of oscillations, right? It'll hit my neck if I do all of this. So that's why we hold it like this. So I keep my violin on my foot. I rest it on there's this little dent near the heel and this bone. So I rest it here. And this is my support. Then I can play whatever. That support lets me play whatever I want.
Yeah, it's just such a treat to to watch you playing. I have to refocus myself to ask you the questions. So, okay, so there's a unique way that the musicians and the violinists in India hold the violin when they form Carnatic music. But
Correct.
there's also something that is very unique to you. I noticed when I saw you performing, you hold it a little bit differently. To my untrained eye, I wasn't able to tell like what was the difference, but it did seem a little different from what I am typically used to seeing.
Yeah, so a couple of differences. One, a lot of Indian violinists don't make use of the chin rest. I, because first of all, they used to hold it like this, which is probably the better way to hold it because then you can sit straight. But when I started playing, the violin was bigger than me. So I couldn't hold it like this. There was no way. So I was always used to holding it with my neck kind of pressed against. Though it's not the best posture, but what it allows me to do is I play with a lot and I also angle my arm a little bit more than the usual person because I put a lot of force into my fingers when I play. So like when I'm doing that, I'm putting a lot of pressure into the way I play. So I need to anchor a little bit more. And then in terms of the way I hold a bow, because I've learned Western classical violin as well, I hold the bow with that style. The way Western musicians hold their bow, I find it gives me a better grip over my bowing.
Fascinating, fascinating stuff. So, yeah, I'm just truly mesmerized by your demonstration. So, yeah, and of course, now you travel all around the world, giving performances. Is there a common thread amongst musicians that from different cultures and different backgrounds? Uh,
So another thing is I studied ethnomusicology.
what have
So
you not studied is my question.
so ethnomusicology is about music and their cultures. Music and the culture surrounding the music. What's very interesting is I remember in my first class, my professor played this, okay? And it was a beat like this. Okay, there's a beat like this that was going. Can you hear the beat? So there's a beat like this
Yes.
that was going. And he asked one question. How many of you think this is music? And how many of you think this is not music? We all raised our hand thinking it's music. What it is in Africa there's one post office and they have a rhythm to how they stamp the envelopes. And it sounds like music to us, but they're never intending on making music. Their intention is just to stamp envelopes. They just did it in this rhythm. And this guy who happened to be there was like, this sounds like a rhythm. It's really changed everything for me. Because before, I really used to think, there's one definition of what music is. There really is not. Also, what is good music and bad music also changes based on the culture. So I've noticed that in Middle Eastern music, they have this thing called a maqam system. And they have notes which to us will sound out of tune, but they're intentionally hitting it every time. So I think all I realized is that there's no music, you can communicate through music with anybody, but at the same time, you can't what everybody's intentions are behind what they're playing, it really changes. And that really was an eye opener for me, because before then I thought, okay, this is music, what we know is music, but there's just so much that goes into it. So the only common thread is that there's a thirst to learn for all of us, because when I go and see some other musician, even if it's a junior musician who's just starting to play, there's something I can notice that I want to take away from that. And I think that is something common that I've seen with anyone. We're always trying to better ourselves in some way.
Fascinating. So yeah, I've of course noted that you're not only an outstanding performer, musician, you're also very humble.
Oh, thank you.
Now you can say no to this. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but when I saw you performing, I never thought like I felt like you were bending sound. Are you able to demonstrate that,
I
or
can try. I can try.
it was just
I
so
can try.
unique? I'd never heard anybody play the violin the way you did.
I'll try. See, part of making that happen was because there was an ensemble. It all played into it. But I'll try. Let's see. Very small.
Amazing. uh, I mean, I'm glad I asked that question in the end because I am floored. I don't know how you do it, but it sounds fascinating. Yeah,
Thank you.
it's yes, it's just to me. I was mesmerized. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Uh, any parting words for our audience, because I'm actually left speechless. So
I
uh,
will say, because again, coming back to the cause, what you're doing is so amazing. Trying to research on, and showing how music really helps, these patients and all. I will say one thing with when it comes to music for me, I think the biggest lesson I've ever had was listen to music with an open mind, because you'll never know what you'll find. If you always come in with some notion of what you know is music, you're always coming in with some baggage. But the second, and I think most of these patients, when they hear music, they have such a pure open mind that they're able to grasp everything. And that's why music, the reason that music can heal and make so much, is because once it's when you hear it with an open mind, every sound, every frequency, everything can really affect you in some way, whether it's mentally or physically. So that's all I would say. Please do always listen with an open mind, because you're always going to be in for a treat.
thank you so much. So with that, we will conclude the interview, and I'm glad you led that answer because, like I said, I'm a bit short of words right now after I listen to your
Thank you.
performance. All right. So thank you again for
Thank you.
your contribution, and I'm Uh, on behalf of our team, we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.